Welcome to SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I'm your host, Susie St. Angelo, and thanks for being here. Today's episode is called Creating Space for Your Well-Being. And in today's episode, I'll be talking with Stephanie Denson. She's the founder and leading organizer with Spirit and Space, a professional organizing company that helps clients who seek orderly, aesthetically pleasing spaces. From whole house downsizing and move preparation to creating order and organizational systems in targeted areas. Stephanie and her team work closely with clients to create a home they love. She is also a collectibles advisor, helping clients identify and sell items of value. I talk a lot about the primary foods, and one of those is our home environment. And so I'm eager to talk to Stephanie today about how that works and how people can feel better in their space. And if emotions come up with getting rid of or moving items to another place or giving them to another person or selling them. So this podcast is for you if you know you want to change something. Maybe it's your career, your health, or another aspect of your life. You might wonder, is this the right age and stage in my life to be doing this? And if you don't know how to start, or you're a person who's afraid of analysis paralysis, I see you, I hear, I understand. I used to feel the same way. And just a reminder, you can find this podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iHeart, Apple, and Amazon podcasts. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get into today's episode and meet my guest, Stephanie Denson. Hi, Stephanie.
Good morning. It's nice to join you this morning.
Nice to see you too, and thank you for being on SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I think that the topic today is timely and certainly one that maybe perhaps people don't think of as affecting our health. So I'm eager to get into our conversation.
Yeah, me too.
So I'd like to ask you, just tell our listeners and viewers about yourself and how you got into this business.
So I'm the founder and lead organizer for Spirit and Space. We provide home organization and relocation support services to clients who want orderly, aesthetically pleasing spaces. And I'm also a collectibles advisor. So I help clients identify and sell items of value. And I was that kid who liked organizing her books and office supplies and all that stuff. So the organizing has always come very easily to me. And in 2019, I actually was inspired in the shower of all places about starting a business for professional organizing. And at the time, I was an officer at a local bank and couldn't do that on the side. So I figured, that'll be a retirement gig. And in 2021, I found myself at a place in my professional career where I was ready to make a change. And I thought, you know what, now's the time. So I left corporate America and started Spirit and Space and have never looked back. And I'll say that while the organizing skills are part of it, and obviously important to have in this field, what has, I think, truly enabled me to be successful with Spirit and Space is the years of communication and interpersonal skills that I developed in human resources and education. And there's also a real market need for what we do. So it's been delightful to see how it evolves and how we can help clients.
I'm a firm believer that one thing leads to another, and that our skill sets develop and get better. Plus, we learn new skill sets. And so you hit on something that I want to go back to is that skill set, that communication and interpersonal skills. What other skills do you feel that you use in your business working with clients?
Well, part of what I think sets Spirit and Space apart is the ability to meet clients where they are, listen to their needs and their goals, and help them accomplish those goals faster than they ever thought possible. It actually all goes back to a time in 2011 when I had to move, and I had one kid sick in bed, another kid had just come out of the hospital, my husband was moving jobs, and a friend came alongside me to help get the garden ready for moving. And in 3 hours, we accomplished exponentially more than what I could have done on my own. And the energy that came from that time with Bruce catapulted me into doing more in the house. And so a lot of what we do is provide that encouragement and guidance to clients. One thing that organizers bring to the table is accountability. So, clients will say, well, I know I can do this on my own, but it's just not getting done. So I'm going to hire you to be sure it gets done. And those are some of the pieces that clients really want, the guidance, asking the questions to help them make decisions about things. And sometimes they're up for homework in between sessions. Others don't want to deal with things between sessions.
Well, it's really like you're a coach and you're walking alongside of them
Absolutely.
and you're holding them accountable as well as you're helping them get unstuck.
Yeah, and I will say that there are other organizers who are much more directive. This is the right way to do it. We're going to do it this way. Let's get going, right now. And that's not me. We all have different needs in our space. And to your original point, Susan, our external environment has a great impact on our internal well-being. And not everything needs to look like the magazines. And for some people, that's not attainable, nor is it realistic. But they need an organizing style that's going to suit their needs and their preferences. So there's no one right way to do it.
Yeah, I think every person has their own DNA, and you've got to meet people, as you said, where they are, and what works for them might not work for someone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Through my health coaching training, we talk about primary foods, and that's not the food on the plate. That's all these other aspects of our lives that contribute to our health. And one of those is our home environment. Our home environment, the space in which we inhabit. How much is in our space? How much we, you know. How comfortable we feel in our space. Are we able to work in our space? Are we able to live in our space, and things like that? So I kind of want to speak to what brings people to you. What sort of circumstances have you experienced?
It's a wide range. It's a really wide range. So we've done everything from, oh my God, the garage is a mess. I need to get it cleaned out. Or my primary closet is a mess and I just need help getting a hold on it. And that could be just a 3-hour project. We did a garage this past summer that was a four session project. And we'll probably do more for that client, but the garage was her primary concern. So very targeted space projects just to get things orderly and get things cleaned out. But then we also have clients who are, in fact, one of my original clients who I started working with more than 2 years ago. I am still working with him. And next week, actually, I'll have an associate with me, and we have 2 full days to tackle the 3 attics in his house. So that's an example of a whole home organization project, and with that, decluttering and selling collectibles as well. Sometimes, Susan, I've actually been surprised at how many clients find spirit in space when either they or someone they love are cleaning out after a death. It could be a couple projects this year have involved a woman who has died, and her siblings have to take responsibility for her home and clean it out and find people who can use the items. Or mom and dad have to move to assisted living. We're out of state. Can you help us? So those projects. I will say more recently, I get very targeted collectibles advising calls. People who have things that they're ready to let go of, china, figurines, silver, jewelry, that kind of thing. And they know it has value, but they don't know how to sell it. And I've built a network of people nationally, but also over 30 local dealers to sell items of value. I also do a lot trying to get things in the hands of nonprofits that can use items that still have value, even if there's not perhaps a lot of monetary value. Um, art, it's always easier to let go of things when you know someone can use them. Uh, so I like to be able to. I want to avoid the dumpster and landfill as much as we can.
Oh yeah. Well, personal experience too. I've done that recently where I've been able to sell or even barter. Someone wanted a chair of mine, and we're bartering for services, and it's great. It's a win-win, and it's an amazing feeling of knowing that someone's going to enjoy a chair, a piece of furniture, whatever that maybe I don't, and I am giving it away, and it's creating more positive energy out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that.
Yeah, and I know it's hard, but it's hard to get to that point where you say we need to let this go, or mom, you really don't need to have this anymore, or you can't take this with you to the next place you're going.
Sometimes people need that encouragement, and also just the questions asking, when was the last time you used this? When might you use it again? How does it honor your grandmother by being in that box at the back of the closet? I mean, various different questions to help people get at what they need to keep and what they're ready to let go of.
A lot of open-ended questions.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Do you see people expressing emotions and sharing feelings about items when you're in the thick of it, when you're right there with people?
That's part of it because stuff is embedded, not all stuff, but many things are embedded with emotional value and stories. And my team and I love hearing those stories. And it's important for people to share them as well. One of my associates was with one of our clients in Meridian Kessler the other day, and they were up in the attic. And in fact, the client just told me about it yesterday. They found a box with college papers and letters from her mother. And my associate said that the client was having such fun sharing the stories of that time in her life. And yesterday, when I happened to see the client, I had to pick up a collectibles that I'm selling for her. And she said, I even found my paper dolls. I said, oh, I remember playing with paper dolls. I said, are you going to keep those? She said, well, I'm going to play with them for a little while. And I said, well, when you're done, one of my vintage dealers no doubt would love to buy that kind of thing. Some of the things that I sell for clients are what they perceive as junk. No one's going to want this anymore. And I say, wait, no, that 60s picnic basket or the paper dolls from the 50s or what have you. Vintage dealers are loving that stuff because people are interested in that these days.
I was at an event many years ago at the fairgrounds, the art and antique show, and many years ago they were saying people aren't into China right now. That's that it'll cycle back about every 20 years. I don't know if that's true or not, but as someone who has a lot of China and has had even more China, I have less now, but still I have a lot. I mean, those are.
China's a tricky thing. I have dealers who will buy China. I also take a good bit of China to auction at Everything But the House, which is a global auction in Cincinnati that I work with closely. And here's one of those tips that I tell clients. There's no China police. If you're not going to be entertaining 12 people, it's okay to let go of half of that set or keep only 8 of them if that's the biggest party you're going to have. And people are buying China, but not as much. The younger generations are not entertaining as formally as you and I and our elders did. But actually, there's a bigger market for China worldwide than there is locally. That's why sometimes I can sell things at auction that I can't necessarily sell locally. But the vintage dealers I work with some regularity buy China because their customers are looking for it.
So what other items are people saying that they didn't think had much value, but
De- Definitely the vintage things. That gentleman who I mentioned, one of my first clients, we have found, oh my gosh, um, picnic stuff, a picnic blanket. Vintage Christmas is very marketable, and other holidays as well. Old suitcases, vintage kitchen stuff like the Pyrex bowls, or I actually even sold remember they used to have those coffee urns that you'd make for bridge club or at church gatherings, what have you. One of my Yep, my mom did too. One of the vintage dealers bought that kind of thing. Vintage kitchen is actually quite marketable, but even random things like cast iron, the old irons or cast iron pans, of course, are always of interest. So many different things. Clowns. I've got a dealer who loves clowns, and actually, to my surprise, found out that my youngest loves clowns. Here's a great story. So. From that original house that I mentioned, I took a bunch of clowns to a vintage dealer who bought them and had them in his shop. And then my youngest was visiting one time, and they love vintage stuff. So we went to the vintage dealer, and my child actually bought the clowns from the dealer who had bought them from my client. It was just really funny, and I had no idea that they liked clowns so much.
And clowns got a bad rap not too long ago. People were a
Yes.
little afraid of clowns, but
Yeah.
you
You either like
know,
them or you don't like them.
that's right. It's a love hate, I think. But yeah, I think it's fun. I think people like to go and look for things that are unique, and that's part of the process. And other people are saying, "Oh my gosh, I've held on to this now. This is I'm the second generation or the third generation to have it, and it's time to move it along. But I know how hard it can be because for people who have storage spaces or they have pods or whatever, out of sight, out of mind, they're saying, I'll just let the next generation deal with it. I don't really care. What do you say to someone like that?
It's always discouraging to hear that. And I know for some people, the process of going through a lifetime of stuff can seem overwhelming and daunting. And I've had people say exactly that. I'm just going to let my kids deal with it when I die. However, I perceive it to be a huge gift, not only to that person, the client who says that, but also to the people who love them to take the time to sort through the belongings. First of all, it leads to a simpler life that is easier to manage and much lighter. And I've seen the difference it can make with people who do finally get to that point of unburdening themselves from all the stuff, and they have a lighter spirit, and it especially if they're moving into a smaller space. What I encourage people to do is start early. I just there's a prospective client who I was talking with last week said we want to be out of the house at 70. They have 5 years. It's a large house, and she said we want to start that process because we don't want our kids to have to do it. So they're going to start, and by starting early, well before the time to move, exactly, well before the time to move, they will make it easier on themselves, a lot less stressful. They will have the agency. You and I both know that things can change on a dime for all of us, but especially for seniors. An accident, a critical medical emergency, someone dies, financial situation. And if people leave the process of downsizing to the last minute or right before they move, it's just that much more stressful, especially if there are physical or cognitive issues that pop up. So if people can start that process well before they think they need to do it, it will be easier for them.
What you were saying resonated with me because many years ago I went to someone who was well known in the city who had passed away, and they were holding a public auction. And you could go in one day to see all the items, and then the next few days were the auction, and you'd have to either buy a ticket or whatever. And they had literally thrown this person's like drawers full of stuff out there, had water bottles, had just cassette tapes, everything. But I mean, there was lots of jewelry and fur coats and furniture and memorabilia attached to this person. And I looked at someone and I said, I would hope no one would ever do this to me because it seemed truly personal and something that could have been avoided. Now, perhaps the person had passed away suddenly, or perhaps left. There was no choice, or maybe there was no relatives to handle that. But that might be the exception rather than the rule. But I came back and I started purchasing stuff.
It motivated you. Yes, yes.
There's that trigger that motivated me to go, I don't want to be that person, regardless. I could get hit by a bus.
Think about the family of those folks, whether it's someone of note or not. I worked with some folks earlier this year whose mom had to move to assisted living, and she left a house out on the west side that was full of stuff. And her two daughters were overwhelmed, understanding, well, how are we going to do this? And it was not a project that warranted hours and hours and hours of downsizing help. What we did is I helped them with the silver, the jewelry, and the coins. I'm amazed at how many people have a box of coins in their house. But I helped them with those things that are the higher value things that are coming out of houses these days. And then I connected them with a trusted estate sale company. And the estate sale did it, and they pulled everything out, priced it, managed the sale, got the donations afterwards, cleaned the house. The clients were so relieved because it can be so burdensome to be left with this home that you don't know what to do with. And you also don't know what has value and what doesn't. So to have some expertise and guidance on that can be really instrumental in that process of cleaning out a house.
Well, I hope those people who are listening, at any age, hear this and can take some steps now to look at their things and see if they're using them, or if they're taking care of an elderly parent. What I think is a good motivator too is moving. I think that's always a good opportunity to go, do I want to take this to the next place? And a realtor is good with telling you how to stage, or they bring a stager in and say you need to get rid of half the stuff that's in this room. But that's a really good motivator too.
If people take the opportunity to sort things, my in-laws chose not to do that, and when they suddenly were faced with a quick move because they couldn't stay in their house anymore, their house was packed, including boxes that had not been unpacked from two moves before. So I agree with you. Moving is a great opportunity to decide, what do I need in my current season of life to be happy, healthy, and comfortable. Because we typically hold on to things that were important to us at one point, or maybe important to someone else, and we got them. But to be intentional about what you need to take with you is an opportunity to right size and to not be burdened by stuff.
I always use the analogy about your closet and how, you know, things might not fit anymore. Um, that's not my style anymore. I don't need those. I'm not in that world anymore. But I would use that analogy with, financial things and having to really look at that closet, and also with your health. Maybe that didn't work. It worked then, but it doesn't work now. You're in a different stage, you're at a different age, and our bodies are different. So I think that's really important to be in that current space. What's that space for me now, and what's going to bring me the most joy, simplicity, peace? So, um, so, so you do, the home organizing, the life transition, the downsizing, and then helping with the collectibles. What do you see probably majority of the time? What are you seeing right now in the market?
In terms of the projects that are most likely to come across the desk, it's a combination of seniors moving out or preparing for a move. That seems to be a sweet spot that Spirit and Space has hit. I can certainly make the playroom pretty too, but um, there are others in the space who are doing more of that. And the collectibles, advising, helping people sell items of value. Those are the two things that I'm seeing the most, and that's where I write a blog, and along with that do social media postings, and I talk a lot about the emotional connection to our stuff and how hard it is to let go. And so I think that's one reason why I'm seeing those kind of projects more often, because it's so hard for people to let go of things.
So do you see Do you see emotion with people you're working with, your clients? To
Absolutely. Absolutely.
what types of emotions are coming up for people?
Actually, it's interesting, Susan, because sometimes, like I said before, it's interesting just to hear the stories. But I also here's a quick story. I was working with a client. She had a sewing room. What she called her sewing room was an extra bedroom in the house, but she wasn't doing much sewing anymore, and she was preparing for a knee surgery. And we had done a lot of decluttering the room, but we found ourselves in that room one morning prepping for the knee surgery. She decided she wanted to put a bed in the room. And we had decided that it would be best to move the dresser into the closet. And as I went over to take something off the dresser, I realized that she was crying. And she said, I hate it. I hate the clutter. He, meaning her husband, he doesn't care, but it is so hard for me. I hate living with so much clutter. And with those tears, she was expressing that very in the gut feeling of not being able to relax in that space. And I said, let's create this space in this room where you can come and find peace and calm. And it was actually really funny because right at that time, behind me, something fell from the top shelf of the closet onto the floor, totally untouched. And she looked at me, she said, it's a sign from God. So we did some work that day to we got stuff declared out. We put the closet in the dresser in the closet. And later in the day, she and her husband did more work, and she sent me a picture later in the day of the bed, the new bed that they had gotten with the nice bedding and a nice ordered room. And she included the emojis, the smiling, happy emojis. It made such a difference to her to have her space that wasn't cluttered, where she could truly relax. And so it's a joy and really an honor to come alongside clients who can reclaim their space in that kind of way.
Yeah, and to see that transition from one emotion to another is wonderful. That has to be rewarding.
It's absolutely rewarding. And it's an honor. People invite us into their personal spaces. And that is something to be respected and taken seriously. We take very, very clear confidentiality agreements. Um, and working with people's personal stuff is an honor. And so we take that very seriously.
Do you have any pushback or any negative emotions that you see too?
Yeah, some of the negative emotions are connected with things that remind people of negative times in their life. I had a client who we were going through a box of framed artwork, and we came to her diploma, her high school diploma, and she was very quiet. And I said, "So tell me about that." And she painted a picture of her high school years where she, first of all, had to walk a long way to and from school. It was a very dark time in her life. She was dealing with depression. There was a lot of conflict at home, and at home she was the object of racial slurs. And I said, "Wow, that was a really difficult time." And I said, "Perhaps it's time to let go of that item that reminds you of that time." It's one thing to hold on to something that reminds us of happy times, but sometimes it's surprising how many people hold on to things that are from negative times or negative relationships. And letting go of that stuff allows you to lighten in ways that can be significant for your mental and emotional health.
I I 100% agree with you. I think that you hold on to them. That's just energy. Everything's energy, in my opinion, negative, positive, and that is not healthy energy to have that in your space. To be reminded of it, and sometimes you have to let it go to be able to move on
Hmm.
in order
Hmm.
to grow.
Yep, I agree with
Yeah.
you.
Those are great. I mean, those are just great examples because, everybody comes to this experience probably with either some, not fear, you're going to go through their things, or perhaps embarrassment, maybe some shame, or that they should have done it sooner, or, neglect, or, you know, And they probably say, I should have done this a long time ago.
Yeah, and they apologize, and I say, "Hey, I am not judging." I just talked with a gentleman this morning who was apologizing and saying, "Oh, when you see this, it's going to be awful. It looks like a hoarder's house." He's been disabled for a number of years. He can't lift more than 5 pounds. He had to be out in rehab. I'm like, I get it. You do not need to apologize for your space. But kudos to you for making that call and seeking help to reclaim your space. You know, we call painters, we call cleaners, we call contractors because we need help in our space. More and more now, people are recognizing that professional organizers provide a service that can be instrumental in their being able to use their space in a way that's healthy and safe.
Well, in addition to the skills you bring, I mean, you're also a therapist, and as I said, a coach and a confidant, and you wear a lot of hats in this role. And so it just depends on that person in that situation. And do you ever walk away saying, I need some me time. I need to recharge my batteries after any experiences?
Some, yes, and it's primarily because of hard work. The emotional stuff doesn't typically get me down, but this work can be hard. And collectibles advising, while on the one hand you think, oh, you know, how hard can it be to work with silver and jewelry and coins and connect people to sell things? But then there's the packing it up and schlepping it and putting it on Facebook and getting it to dealers, and especially when there are timed projects. We cleaned out a house in Meridian Kessler where the owners had moved out. Ripley Auction had taken some stuff, but there was still lots of stuff in the house. And we worked over 70 hours to get that stuff out. And it ended with a driveway giveaway event where we pulled everything out that we hadn't been able to sell to about 16 dealers. We had already given stuff to 9 different nonprofits, and there was still stuff. And also more than a whole carload of cardboard because the owners didn't throw things out. And so their kids who were out of state were cleaning out this estate. That it was exhausting, just physical exhaustion. But the emotional piece of it, I have great clients, and it's because it's an honor to work with them. The emotional stuff doesn't get me down. Uh, I will say there are times when I have a consultation for projects that I don't think Spirit and Space is right for. I typically don't work with those who are dealing with chronic disorganization, the classic hoarding that you might think with goat paths and piles. That isn't where my sweet spot is, but I have a great colleague who loves that and is really good at that and is certified to do that work. So if I don't think we're the best fit, I want to find someone who can help the client. Or if there's a quick clean out of a house that has to be done by the end of the month, for instance, and I don't have the capacity to do it, I'm going to connect people to get that done.
Yeah, you're a connector. I know you're in Indiana, but do you work outside of Indiana?
Yeah, actually, I've done a hands-on work in 6 different states, from California to New York, New Hampshire, Colorado, et cetera. I also do virtual organizing and have had other projects helping people in coaching and providing virtual guidance. So it's been fun, and one of the things I didn't anticipate when I started Spirit in Space. Many of those folks are people who knew me in past lives and want to work with me because they see that what I'm doing in the world, and they think I need that, and I trust that person. So that's been a real pleasure.
That's great. You just never know where things are going to lead, but you you know your niche, and your sweet spot, and you know other people that you connect to, and just going back on the hoarding piece. I think that I've had a hoarding client in my past, and it was very stressful walking in. And on the outside, you assume this person was just the loveliest person. Well, if you met this person walking down the street or at an event, you just say, "Oh, what a smart, lovely person." And yet, the way they live inside was just so completely different than what you'd expect, and I know there were a lot of emotions attached to that, and not being able to let go of things, and I know others who have helped friends who have that hoarding capacity, and it takes a certain person, and a qualified person, to work in that environment, work with that type of person. So I admire that, and I admire the fact that you say, "Hey, that's not mine. That's not my skill. But I can get you someone who is." So that's wonderful. So great. You do work in other areas and can work virtually. That's great. So one question that I always ask my guests is, what's your SOS? What's one or two things that a listener or viewer can take away today that they can do besides calling you and asking you about your business and your services? What's one or two things they can do to move their life forward?
I was thinking of this question because you obviously shared it ahead of time, and I thought of a brochure that I have. It's called the Top 10 Tidy Tips, and it's free from the website. And I turned to that to like, okay, what are the kernels of wisdom? One of the things is, especially if someone wants an orderly space, it's important to make time for that. Maybe it's weekly or maybe it's daily. A 15-minute declutter time can make a big difference in someone's space. Now, if they're starting from a great deal of disorder, then it's helpful to put a plan in place to get a hold on that. But on a regular basis in our lives, especially if order is something that is important for you to find calm, making regular time to declutter and organize things and restore order can be very helpful. Um, the other thing is, I think it's important to realize what you need and to have grace with yourself. It doesn't have to look like the organizing magazines or the home edit TV shows or what have you. Our society has told us that we have to have things in a particular way of order. And as I referenced earlier, there is no one right way. So having grace with yourself and recognizing that you need to find a way that works for you can give you a permission to do it differently. Um, and also connected to that is not comparing yourself to others, not comparing yourself to the pictures that you see, and just knowing that you've got to find a way that works for you. Um, the other thing I will say is that it's important, and this is sort of for anyone, unless those who have already really embraced the simplistic and minimalist lifestyle. It's important to get used to letting go. You mentioned the closet earlier. I've got a client, and I do this myself actually, who has a bag in her closet. And when she sees things in the closet that she's not wearing very much anymore or hasn't worn in a while, she puts in the bag and routinely takes that to Goodwill or another nonprofit organization. Getting used to letting go gives us permission to remove things in our space that we are not using anymore or don't need. I just thought about this yesterday. Years ago, probably, I've been in Indiana now for 15 years. No, anyway, about 15, 20 years ago, I bought a pink jacket at a thrift store. And it was on the mannequin at the jacket. It had this fabulous turquoise and pink and purple scarf. And I thought, oh, that looks great. I swear, I have maybe worn that jacket maybe 20 times in those years. And it came across my brain space the other day because I'm getting jackets out now with winter. I'm like, I do not need that pink jacket. I have not worn it hardly at all. Someone else can use it. So that's going in the giveaway pile. Recognizing that it's okay to just let go of things that you're not using. So getting used to that's important.
Those are great tips, great easy tips to take with us, and those are some things I need to think about too. So thank you. So, is there anything else that you'd like to share that we didn't talk about today?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to recognize that they are not in it alone. If you have listeners who are feeling like, oh, I need to get my house in order. I don't know how to do it. I don't have the money to help anyone. There is all kinds of information online for inspiration. And with Spirit and Space, part of what I want to do is provide guidance for people, not only hands and feet on the ground, boots on the ground assistance, but information in the blog and on my website and social media that can inspire other people. I love it when someone comes up to me, and this happened at church not too long ago. A friend came up and said, "Oh, were your ears burning? I was cleaning out my mom's house and I thought, what would Stephanie do?" And I love the fact that whatever I put out there in whatever humble way I can, she was taking some inspiration from that. So people can at least turn to the World Wide Web for information. And there are also, you may have friends who can help you or family who can help you. It can be hard with family because all the raging family dynamics can come back and make it challenging. But for those who really need assistance and accountability, there are people like myself and other organizers who can come alongside and help you get that work done. So you're not in it alone.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, I want to also ask how people can get a hold of you. How can they reach you?
We'll certainly have a website, spiritandspacellc.com is my website. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. People can follow me there. I try not to spam folks. There is, as I mentioned, the free top 10 tidy tips from my website, but then I typically send an email once a week, if that. I don't want to be that irritating voice all the time. So I do try to provide guidance, inspiration, how-tos, and stories about stuff that go a little bit deeper as well. So I try to mix it up.
So I will post all of the ways to reach out to you in the description and my podcast notes so people can reach you there as well. I want to thank you for spending some time with me today on SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I loved our conversation. I actually feel calmer now too, just talking to you about my space.
Well, and actually, when I was talking about things that I don't wear, I'm like, oh, several more things in my closet came to mind. So I'll be doing some of that decluttering today myself.
But I want to thank you for being here today. It is a really important primary health that doesn't get enough attention. I mean, it does when it needs to, but I do think that this is an area of our life that we just don't think about as being a part of our health. And so I'm really glad that you as an expert can come on and share your wisdom and some great stories. And I look forward to having you back. And I know our paths will cross again in the future.
Thank you for raising this as an issue that's connected to well-being, because it absolutely is. And it's been an honor to join you this morning, Susan. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Well, friends, sadly, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for listening and watching SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. And thank you, Stephanie, for being my guest today. You know, it was a great conversation to have about her services of home organizing, life transitioning, downsizing, and, offering advising on collectibles and things that we might think don't have value, but really do in this world. And often there's emotions attached to it. And often it's affecting our mental and well-being. So it's oftentimes we need to look pretty closely to our environment. And I hope that all of us can, look at Stephanie's tips and take a few and move forward and enjoy our lives. So thank you. A quick reminder on how you can support this podcast: like, share, and subscribe. Send it to your friends. Send me a review or any questions you might have, and your question may be featured on an upcoming episode. Follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And if you'd like to be added to my email newsletter, please share your email address. I'd love to add you. And reach out to me if you are interested in any coaching services or breathwork services. And so until next time, take care and see you soon. Thanks.